step forward.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Then and Now podcast. I'm your co-host, C. Diesel. To the left of me, I have Lelouch V, bundled up Lelouch V today. To the right of me, I have Professor E, King of the Comics, Ethan Murphy. Professor E, man, how y'all doing today, brothers? Y'all doing good?
I am ecstatic.
Yeah.
We are here today to talk about one of my favorite movie franchises, so I'm in a good place.
Facts. I'm good too, man. I'm actually a lot warmer than Otis, although he does look pretty fashionable in that scarf and hat, though. So I ain't hating it too much.
It's
One of my coworkers made this for me.
A word? Okay.
That's clean. Yeah, guys, sorry about the tardiness. We had some unforeseen circumstances come up, so the show's starting a little bit later than usual, but it's fine. You know,
yeah, we're on CPT, obviously, so
exactly. But guys, let's go ahead and get into it. This is the big thing of the show today. That's probably going to take up a good bit of the time because we're going to be covering not only one, not two, not three. Well, actually, it's three. I'm tripping. But we're covering Creed 3 and the rest of the Creed trilogy. And kind of get into that. You said what?
I said we're not the Miami Heat.
Weird.
No one.
That was a time. That was a time I hated them.
Man. Oh yeah, that was.
Good old days, man. Back when I hated LeBron with a passion.
That happened.
But anyway,
saw it happen.
Getting into the show, Creed 3. Well, let's go ahead and start with the trilogy in general. From the jump, how do you guys feel about the overall trilogy and the way it turned out? We can start with Otis.
I mean, one of the first Creed movie is one of my all-time favorite movies. That's something that me and E have talked about before. I relate pretty heavily to Adonis as a person. I mean, seeing a person that has some of those anger issues and trying to resolve that and to focus into becoming a better version of himself, I can definitely relate to that pretty heavily. So, I mean, seeing him in his journey felt like me watching somebody do what I wanted to do. So I related to it really heavily. The first movie is, like I said, is one of my all-time favorite movies. The second one, not as much. We can get to them piece by piece as we keep going. The second one is definitely my least favorite of the three, and then the third one has been a solid dismount. I have my issues with some things about it, and we'll get to that too. But overall, I'm a big fan of this franchise, and I'm looking forward to seeing more from it because apparently, they got an anime series coming from this on Amazon now. So
that'd be sick.
I ain't even heard of that. I'm not surprised. Not gonna be Jordan is it's a blurred and a half, yeah, dude.
It's Mr. Director now, man. Hey, for a directorial debut, it wasn't bad. So I'm ready to see him direct more stuff.
Absolutely.
But yeah, for people that don't know, before I'll let Ethan go. We're gonna be covering this pretty much sequentially from movie 1 to 3. And obviously saving the best for last. We won't spend too much time on the first two because everybody's seen them, but we're going to be getting through them sequentially and getting through the trilogy itself.
He's saying the best for last. That's his opinion. That is not our opinion. Matter of fact, Otis and I have a completely different opinion. The first movie, by the way, which has a 95% reading on Rotten Tomatoes, is one of my favorite films of all time. It was definitely my favorite film for 2015. Not only was it a good movie, but it influenced my life so much that I literally, in 2015, after I saw it, it really did compel me to go ahead and get up off my ass and move to LA. I grew out my mustache, and this happened. I didn't have this before I saw Creed. I got this after I saw it.
Damn.
So that's how much it changed me. I knew who Michael B. Jordan was because I'd seen Fruitvale and I'd seen Friday Night Lights and I'd seen The Wire and even seen Chronicle too. But it wasn't like I was like, yo, Michael B. Jordan's the greatest of all time. It wasn't until I saw Creed I was like, yo, he's the greatest of all time. So this movie, and like Otis said before, I was able to relate to the character at the very end in a different way. I don't have anger issues necessarily, but at the very end when he says I had to prove it, he says, prove what? Prove they're not a mistake. I felt a mistake several times in my own life for various reasons. And for him to say that's why his motivation for everything he's doing is that he wants to prove to himself that he's more than nothing. That's why I love the movie so much. So yeah. That's my first take on that.
Interesting. It's information. I don't know about Otis, but I know this is information that I was not privy to initially beforehand. It's like a year of us doing the show, so it's interesting. Good to know.
Oh yeah.
For me, I also enjoyed this trilogy. Me seeing it more recently, I think like up until like a couple of days before I saw the third one. I also identify with Adonis to at least on the front of the imposter syndrome that I feel like he had to an extent. Him more so because he had a legacy that he wanted to prove that he was an old man, but I definitely understand the concept of rising to success really fast and feeling as though that did you get a bit of an accident? Did you deserve it? Things of that nature. But I think that's credited to just how well written characters to me are within the trilogy. But
I feel like he deals with the imposter syndrome a bit more in part 2 than part 1.
I feel like to an extent the first one, because I mean the baby Creed thing was a thing throughout the entire trilogy of like that nickname of like people. Like he even said in the first one he didn't even go by that initially.
Right, he didn't go by Creed, his family name at all. Yeah.
But yeah, getting into the first one though, how did you? Again, Otis said it's one of his favorite movies of all time. He gave it, I think you said earlier, like an 8 or 9 out of 10. And then shit, we already know how Ethan felt about it. Ethan gave us the whole soliloquy about it. For me, I thought it was dope. I thought it was solid. I enjoyed it. I think looking at the other two compared to the first one, you can tell it's a little bit more raw, and you can see, at least for me, you can see the development and the quality of Michael B's acting going throughout. Because he was good in the first one, but seeing his ability to like express emotion a lot more and kind of act out different scenarios, you can see that growth there in the time gaps and stuff.
So part of it, you think his acting is better as the movies go on?
Yeah,
it's interesting because it's and this obviously is debatable. It's subjective. Mm-hmm. I think in the first film, his personality, he has more range. In the second film, he's pretty much Vegeta mode the entire time. He's more or less a jerk most of that movie. He doesn't really have as much range in it. The third movie, he's almost more Goku, more peaceful. He's a family man and everything. But I get into spoilers, but he's more of a family man. I think the first movie shows the most range. He does get angry, really, really angry. But he also jokes around the most with Rocky. He seems the most like endearing when he's talking to Tessa Thompson. He's also most vulnerable when he makes mistakes. So I feel like he has the most range in the first movie, ironically enough.
Yeah, he felt the most natural there to me. Like it felt like he was less acting and more being the role. Like it felt very very natural to me. Like I didn't feel like he was trying to be Adonis. He was Michael B as Adonis, essentially. Like like a lot of the greats do. Like I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna go on a random tangent. Staying here on Creed. He felt very natural in that. In the first one, in the second one, well,
it's still in the first one. Now we're gonna get into the second one in a second.
Okay, that's fine. I
feel you can tell that. Like I feel like a lot of the interactions that he had with the characters might have been some improv, just because it felt like things that he would say normally. He felt very grounded and rugged, which is who the character was, so it made sense.
Yes, real quick to piggyback off of that, some of the scenes I know were improv. For example, there's a scene where he's with Bianca in her room, she's playing the little piano thing, and he's doing a freestyle rap. That was improv. Everything he says during that rap was improv. And then there's a part where he's walking with Rocky down the street, and he goes, make him an offer he can't refuse. He impersonates Marlon Brando. That was improv too. So he actually was, like you said, he was embodying this. He was being Michael B in lots of senses. He still was, of course, acting and doing the script stuff, but he was also using his own natural charisma with the character too.
I agree. Definitely, as far as like he felt like he was that character. But for me, I think that plays into his ability to act. When, at least for me, when I'm looking at acting, I'm looking at you being able to portray something or get into a character. For me, that's what I really enjoy. And again, that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy characters that are like natural to the character they're playing. That's also great. But I felt like he didn't have to try as hard to embody that. Again, I can't speak for him, but it's just from my perspective. It seemed like because that role was so natural to him, he was able to do it a lot more enthusiastically because that was him. I feel like as you get into the series where he becomes things like where he's a father and he's married now, in which these are roles that he's never had in his life. As far as we know, he didn't have any hidden Drake kids. And as far as we know, he's not married yet. So him being within roles that aren't natural to him, I like seeing him in those roles. And then when it comes to the first one, like you guys said, he was the underdog. He was hungry. It felt like he was in that one gear for that movie, while the other ones, he felt like he had to adjust to things being thrown at him. Like he's in a position where he's comfortable in the second and third movie, and something gets thrown at him, he has to adjust and he has to react to the things that are around him. But I guess we can get into the second one now, unless you guys have any other thoughts on the first one before we move on.
That's fine.
But yeah, for the second one, for me personally, the second was my favorite. Well, not my favorite out of the three, but up until I saw the third one, this was my favorite. I thought it was the best. I enjoyed he was an underdog in the first one, but he felt even more like an underdog in this one from the choreography to me. Just based off the fact that Drago was so much bigger than him, and you saw him struggle significantly trying to fight him and go through that way of doing that. I think so much so that I think Rocky had to show him like not a different style of boxing, but they had to change up the way they trained and the way he went about that fight to finish that out. And then I also enjoyed that for that one, kind of like similar to the third one, we not only got development from Adonis himself, but from the antagonist in that film. We learned a lot about Drago's past and seeing his dynamic with his father and how he felt about his mother leaving and things like that. I thought that was really dope to see the development from both sides. So at least for me personally, I felt like whenever the camera wasn't on Adonis, there was still some good stuff going on there. Which I mean, it's a little bit more world building to me personally. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. The biggest takeaway for me, my favorite part of Creed Part 2, which is at 83% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is actually the lowest so far, is the lowest ranked on Rotten Tomatoes, is Creed 2, is the story for Victor Drago. His story, because he's, like you said, he's not a villain. Ricky Conlon, he's pretty much a villain. But Victor Drago is very much he's just an antagonist. We're seeing his story. He's such a likable character that A, he's getting his own spin-off series of films or whatnot for that character. And B, there were other scenes with him that had to get deleted because they said, yo, they're making him too likable. So clearly he has a very compelling story. He makes lots of sense. I enjoyed him a lot. And I was glad to see him come back, spoiler alert, in Creed 3, basically as the Brawley to Creed's Drago, to Creed's Goku, as far as them training for fun, essentially. So it was, I think the Creed story or motivation is the most basic in Creed 2 and also kind of the weakest. It's he loses a fight and he kind of goes insular and doesn't really talk much or do much. He's just kind of pouting. He snaps at Rocky and their relationship falls apart. It's kind of like that didn't work for me. And also you mentioned the training that he has. It's like, I'm not sure what this is. Like, we got to beat a Russian. Let's train in a desert. I know in some of the deleted scenes, it kind of goes a little bit more into that, but it doesn't quite seem as connective. So I wasn't quite as, I still enjoy watching it. I think Stephen Cable Jr., the way he directs fight scenes is more compelling than essentially Ryan Coogler in some sense. It's meant to be more flashy, but overall, I just didn't enjoy this storytelling as much with Coogler at the helm as it did part one.
Go ahead. Oh, I know Oben Wade. I watch his face all the time.
Before I start on this, I do enjoy this movie. This is a movie that I do rewatch occasionally. Like I enjoy Creed 2, but I mean, besides Drago as a character, because I think that he was really well done in that movie. I don't really like much about like anything else. Like I felt like Creed was so brooding that entire movie that he didn't even feel like an actual person. Tessa Thompson, like none of her lines like felt compelling to me in the slightest. Like I just didn't care about anything she said in that entire film. I thought the choreography actually was the weakest. Like I mean, the way that they showed the scenes was highlighted a little bit better than what they showed in the first Creed, like the construction of them. But like the actual fight choreography, like the punches for punches, they didn't really feel as compelling as they did to me in the first one or in this third one that we're going to be talking about. And like the whole trying to force this cancer storyline on Rocky, like I don't really feel like that actually like helped the story at all. I think it was just like another element that was there.
Yeah.
So the cancer, when you tell me he has cancer, that's in part one, right? Though.
No, that's the second one where he has the cancer.
Yeah. So it's part one where they fight the cancer together, and because Rocky Sylvester Stallone was nominated for an Oscar for part one because he's dealing with cancer.
Yeah, that was the first one, wasn't it?
Yeah, but no, they deal with it more in the second one, don't they? Like
no, the second was more about the father's.
He leaves to go at the end.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So for that one, that's probably the second. So the second movie, I love the sub dynamic of being a father and being a parent and parenting, but also trying to deal with the extra bullshit that you have going on.
Yeah.
That's why the second movie had my favorite scene in the franchise, where he takes his daughter to the gym because he's like trying to watch her, but he's also going through whatever depression he has from like that loss. So he's trying to find that balance, and you kind of see him like slowly explode and where he's like punching the bag, but his daughter's there. To me, I like that scene. I like the way that scene was done, and I love maybe again, I'm the fatherless bastard of the podcast, so having the dynamic of having somebody that's young and doesn't have a dad around try to be a father when you don't have the proper example of such, and then also dealing with your own personal stuff. I like that dynamic, and I thought that was well done there personally. But my bad, Otis, go continue.
I feel. Otis, you can finish.
Yeah, so let me recant the stuff with Rocky, because that was the first one. That's because I watched 1 and 2 back to back last night. So I think I'm blending the scenes, because like I was like, yeah, this doesn't feel in place with him dealing with everything else in the second movie. Sweet, so
right?
Yes, they have to add all. That's way too much in one movie. Good lord.
But yeah, like I just felt Michael B's character was the least compelling in the second one. Like I don't dislike him. I don't think that he did like a trash performance or anything like that. But in comparison to what he did in his own work, this was the weakest to me. Right.
Yeah, I see your point there. I agree with the Tessa Thompson point though, as far as like she felt like she was kind of not even around a lot for that second one.
Doesn't really do much. Her storyline is to get pregnant, basically. It was cool to see Phylicia Rashad show up more in part 2, because she was in the beginning. Because I love Phylicia Rashad, and she was in the beginning of part 1, and she did a really good job. And then she's pretty much out of it until the very end when she's watching him on TV. The thing about with part 2, as you mentioned, Charlie, I like this scene too, where he's in the gym, he's training, he's trying to, because he brings her there because she's crying, she can't get her to stop crying, essentially, Amara. And then finally, when he starts crying himself while he's punching the bag, and she stops and watches him. I like that scene too. But it's Otis said, he's kind of brooding the whole time, and I think what I loved most about Creed 1 was the father figure. Creed grew up without a father figure, and it's so much so that if you remember, maybe it's a very specific detail. When he's watching at the beginning of the movie, he's watching the old footage on YouTube of Creed and the Rocky fighting. He stands in place of Rocky fighting against Apollo, not Apollo fighting against Rocky. He's still mad at his dad. He has abandonment issues. That's the problem he's dealing with, very much so. So you see that he actually gravitates towards Rocky because he sees Rocky as a father figure. He calls him uncle, but he sees him as a father figure. So when so in the second movie, when he pushes them away so hard that they're no longer together, it's kind of like, why would you do that? Why would you get rid of your father figure? That makes it doesn't quite add up. You'd be, I don't know. So that's why it kind of rubbed me the wrong way in that sense.
True, I understand. I see you on that point. I personally, I agree with you on that standpoint. As far as I think Rocky should have been around a lot more, especially with the dynamic of him being a father now. I thought that would have been the thing to do. Like he was there. I think he was around for like the birth, but I don't think he was around for much of the stuff after that, or even I don't think he was around for the third one at all. So I thought that would have been. I thought there was a lost potential there to have some scenes with the three of them and kind of him showing him the ropes. But even then, that would have been kind of weird because Rocky wasn't the best father himself either. So he was kind of learning alongside Adonis from that aspect as far as being a father, which is how you got him in the end of the second movie going to actually see his kids,
right?
And meeting his grandchild and things of that nature. But yeah, for me, I felt like the first one was a sense of things came really natural and really fast to Adonis's character. Like he went from not having much professional experience at all to training with one of the best boxers of all time, getting really good, and then in like one fight, now you're world famous, and then you get the title in the second one. From then on is when he gets, because now you're on top of the mountain, people are gunning for you. Now he has a lot more conflict personally to me that I see in the second and third one going on, especially now that he has not just, he can only focus on fighting now. Now he has a daughter to take into account. He has a wife to take into account. He has a lot of other stuff outside of him. That first one, you can just worry about your passion and just get there. He felt like, to me, a more fully fleshed out character in the second and third one, because as a regular person, unless you're really young, very rarely can you only focus on your passion 100%. You have other things outside of your passion that affects the way you handle that. So to me, it felt, I personally attached myself to the character a lot more in the second and third one. But
so I see where you're coming from. The idea, there's a lot more going on as far as his own personal life he has to deal with. But it wasn't. I guess his personal life didn't seem that compelling or interesting. You got to remember the second one, which takes place, I guess, like roughly, it's got to be at least a year, if not more, from the first one, because he's been boxing long enough now that he has like 20 more matches under his belt. He's
To
able
get
to
the
fight
title
Mike
fight.
Wheeler as far as to be for
It's
the
got to
title.
be years later.
It's got to be a couple years.
Yeah,
They
a
said the
couple-
whole
couple
thing
years. I
was
think it's like 2 years or so.
the Cannell guy was. They said he was older at that point, so it had to be at least like 3 to 4, maybe 5.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, boxing, like you're doing it max 2 fights a year. So if he's done 20, I mean,
because his record was much higher. I think like 18
Mhm.
more fights, something crazy. So yes, it's years later. He's able to fight Stuntman again for the title fight. And the thing about it is with the second one, it doesn't quite seem. I guess with the first movie, it's my own personal life. That character in that story is a lot more relatable. The idea of being, you said, an underdog, but seeing someone that you're going for what you want. I remember at the beginning, he walks away from he just gets a promotion at a job, I guess in banking, in finance. He walks away from it to literally go and move in. You guys have been in my apartment. You know my house, my place,
Right.
nothing. He goes to live in a place that's even smaller than my place. He leaves. He loses his car, loses his mom's. His mom pretty much is disowned him, and he lives in a shitty little box of a place, making no money. He gets all that in the first movie. He's a complete underdog, and he tries to have a relationship with Rocky. That doesn't start off for a while. Then he goes and loses matches against my Stuntman. The movie ends with him losing again. So he's still very much trying to find his footing. The second film, he opens with him becoming the champion. He's a rich, very successful. He has a beautiful woman that agrees to marry him. He's all these things going from all these things on the up and up for him, and so to speak. But he lost one match, and he's pretty much pouting and brooding the entire time. I couldn't relate to being a rich, successful boxer with a beautiful wife and a beautiful baby on the way, brooding all the time. For me personally, there's something to connect to.
That's interesting. I know at least for me and Ethan, we have
Otis.
a lot. No, me and you. We have a lot more connection personally to to different parts of the story, because again, that was where you were in life for the first one. For me, I feel like I connected to him a little bit more in the second one. With, you guys know my life at that point in time, where I had a lot of great positive things happen to me back to back to back, and then had that huge thing that kind of hit me, I think like a year ago up until this past February, that kind of threw me for a loop. So I have all the success, and now I have to deal with this crazy thing, that is insurmountable thing, where now I'm kind of trying to continue to do my positive things, but I'm also dealing with this. I don't know. For me, that's probably why that second one, which is interesting how people's connection to movies can be like that. But at least for me, I think I attribute a lot of my ability to like this movie, at least the second one, is due to the connections I had to my own personal life there.
Fair.
That's granted, this biased way to look at it, but I think that's how art in general impacts people in general. You kind of find what you connect to.
Yeah. For
There's
me,
no
like
yeah.
him brooding the way that he was in the second one was kind of weird to his character, because like you had gone through so much in your youth for these things to affect you to this level. Once you have all of this in the back, kind of was like strange to me. But I mean, there's always going to be bad things that come along with good things too. So I mean, I'm not saying that you can't react negatively to them, but to brood to that level, like he felt Batmanish on some parts of that.
I'm a Punisher, like Frank Castle. I was like, God damn, yeah.
Like,
well, to your point on that, we do it. He does acknowledge in that third one that he never dealt with the stuff in his past. He kind of just pretended it, like in his own words, he acted like it never existed and kind of just kept moving.
It's fair.
It's like the more he has to like encounter issues and actually deal with them, and he can't just act like they don't exist. I don't think he's ever dealt with them before. So it is, at least I know I'm like that, to where like your self-defense mechanism is to shut down and retreat into yourself.
Yes, and I see what you're saying. I think this kind of had the issue as almost like backsliding, like because we do see it at the low point in the first film, at the end of the second act, where he goes to prison, goes to jail for overnight because he is punching out the fight promoter, the promoter in the first one, where he punched out the promoter at the fight after he calls him Baby Creed, right? At the end, and when he's in prison, Rocky comes to see him and he tells him, I know how it feels and all these things and everything. That's very much he's dealing with his anger there too. So for him to move forward with Rocky and then to go what they go through together for months, for him to come back in the second film and for him to be like at even lower point, being even lower, more angry, more brooding, even more quiet. It's kind of like all that progress you had in the first movie is gone. And now we're at somehow negative, below ground zero. How does that happen?
Well, he doesn't start the movie brooding. When he starts the movie, he's ecstatic. Like all the great things in his life are happening. The issue comes when up until that point to a Rocky, he hadn't really had much of a disagreement. Like everything they kind of went through was like, again, this is the first like rough patch in the road. Well, I mean, to me, I look at the relationship with Rocky like
he was in jail. I thought that was a rough patch.
not well, kind of, sort of. That was more of an issue with him, not really an issue with Rocky per se. Like the second movie is when he has issues with Rocky of him saying that, oh, you don't believe in me, you don't think I can do this. Because up until that point, I look at least the way I perceive it is when you're in the honeymoon phase of a relationship where things are kind of always progressing and you don't yet hit that first disagreement. And that second movie is when they hit that disagreement of like, oh, now you don't believe in me. We did all this stuff up to this point, but now you don't believe in me. And they hadn't really had that disagreement up until that point. To me, that's significant of where he just decides to not train him because I don't think you should do this. Okay. Versus the first movie, it's I don't really believe in myself. I want to take that part of my life out, and you're bringing me back into this life. The second was like more of an issue with those two versus Rocky himself coming out of this. I don't know. That's the way I perceived it.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
But let's go ahead and get into the third one. Do you guys have any other closing remarks on the second one?
No, I mean there was one thing one of the deleted scenes. Have you all seen the deleted scenes for Creed 2?
I have not.
You haven't, Otis? Okay. So one of the deleted scenes also that I really wish they kept in the movie, which makes the third one make more sense. After the fight with Drago, Adonis goes and he sits down with him in the locker room essentially, and he says, "Don't let one loss define you," which makes sense as far as he actually has it's a character arc. Now, not that in the theatrical version, that's not there. So as far as we know, Adonis and Drago have no relationship and they never talk to each other. But he says that don't let one fight define you. And while he's saying this, you see Drago Ivan Drago, the dad, kind of off away from the locker room watching this. Essentially, he comes over and he sees that, and that kind of starts the relationship between Drago, Victor Drago, and Creed. They're actually kind of like trying to have a friendship essentially. And I think they give each other some dap, and he walks off essentially.
Yeah.
And then Rocky, of course, sees Ivan, and then they kind of have a stare down. And they deal with their stuff, but it's meant to be. I wish that scene was there because it shows that Creed had grown. Also, it shows that he wants to be there for Victor. So in part 3, it makes more sense that they're still training together. That you guys want to do a fight with them and stuff.
All right. That is one note too that I do enjoy about these films, that they have these antagonists and they have these whatever types of beef, but kind of on a similar chord to like I guess like with Dragon Ball, where whenever you tough it out and you go to the extremes of like just getting your emotions out and dealing with those issues, you then build that respect for that person. I know I was like that when I wrestled. I had a couple people where like I didn't really like them. I didn't really know them personally, but I didn't like them really. And then we wrestled, built that respect for each other, and now we're cool to that point. It's almost like when you're fighting with your auntie and your grandma's like, let the boys go on outside and fight it out, and then get it over with, and then come back.
It's a guy thing, man. It is what it is. It's a guy thing. So,
but yeah, getting into the third one, this is the highly anticipated, highly coveted third one that I don't think I've heard any mixed reviews. I think everybody's, at least for me, unanimously enjoyed it. Some people love it. Some people dislike it. It's okay. But I think to me, this third one was a tribute to nerds and blurs of all kinds with all the anime inspiration and like marks on it, from like exact scenes damn near being copied to them having like Naruto posters in the background for different places. It was very enjoyable for me. Like, feel like a kid in a candy store, like, ooh, you see that? I know what that is. How did you guys feel about it initially? Just like a brief overview.
Well, I mean, for me, this felt like a legitimate blurred event. Like this felt like two blurs like coming together to make a bigger thing. Like seeing John Majors and Michael B in this. Well, I was so much anticipating this. I can't really think of the last time I had that much anticipation going into a movie. Like, period, honestly. So, I mean, just the fact that I was excited for this and I can go into the movie theater and enjoy this movie to the level I did is definitely a marker for me. So, kudos for that. I got certain issues with it, but that's me more so nitpicking and talking about things that I prefer to see in films, but overall, it was definitely a positive experience for me.
Yeah, same. I agree. It was an event, and piggybacking off of the blurred event of it. Think about this: it was a vast majority black or people of color cast, and at the theater I was at here in Burbank, California, it was a multicultural group of people that came out to see it. There were a bunch of white folks up in there, Latinos, blacks, Asians, everyone in the world was there. Think about that. The last time you saw it, a movie starring predominantly black cast had everyone in the world going to see it. I mean, I know Black Panther had some credit, but it was mainly from Disney pull too. But this, I mean, this is an event that doesn't happen often. And then with this, like you said, Otis, for it to be, you said this too, Charlie, for it to be celebrating blurred culture so much, so blatantly, openly, and for it to be accepted that well, it's like, yo, this is something special. This is something different. So I do, Otis, I had some gripes here or there, but ultimately it's a really, really fun time. I enjoyed it very much. Stephen A. Smith is in that movie for some reason, but other than that, it's still
because Max Kellerman got kicked off the show. That's why it's switched up to Stephen A.
but it was a genuinely a fun time, man. I had a blast.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think this the rare formula to this concoction of a movie is that you have the two main stars are people that are like on the top of Hollywood right now, right? Like Michael B being damn near the Rock level when it comes to superstardom in movies. Jonathan Majors is either right there or right behind him with having 3. I don't think Devotion was a number 1, but it's a great movie. Well, 4 now, because I don't know if you guys have seen Magazine Dreams yet. That's something I want to see.
I haven't. Yeah, I heard.
He's like 4 big movies out. One of them being a Marvel movie, the other one being Creed. The other ones aren't like almost at AAA like their games, but they're not to that level, like big box office. But for you to have 4 movies out simultaneously where you're either the lead or a co-star, he's right there. He's about to be at that. He's about to be a superstar if he isn't already one. So I definitely enjoyed that, as well as all the nerd inspiration that was within this film and how Michael B hyped it up too. I think he gave out the specific Goku and Frieza scene, like the gut punch. He was promoting that everywhere, which side note to anybody that has issues with people being, whenever a celebrity says they're a fan of anime and they bring up something that you perceive as casual, just go home, go touch grass. I'm sorry. People can like what they like, and like I saw a million posts on all the nerd groups about him being a fake nerd or Megan being a fake nerd because
fake nerd.
They talked about the mainstream anime and they didn't talk about some random anime with a million, like, you know, the anime with like 15 different words in the name, because they don't watch that and promote that.
Some super off the beaten path anime that no one's ever heard of.
Like they like what they like. People act like they didn't watch those anime at all.
And like, you're not gonna pretend that DBZ wasn't like one of your anchors into nerddom in the first place,
right?
Like, we're not gonna like, if you're a black nerd in America, there is no way that you aren't at least aware of DBZ.
Yeah, we're doing a whole documentary about that now. It's like that's the single biggest thing that made blur culture exist was DBZ in the 90s, and then also for a younger generation, for Charlie's, Naruto was there too. I mean, he had shout out to Naruto with the posters.
Both of them, honestly, because I was still running on Toonami when I was growing up.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, that whole last fight scene was Obito versus Kakashi, bro. Like that was what that was.
That's why I geeked out so much. This is my favorite fight scene and one of my favorite fight scenes in all anime. Yeah.
All right, which we'll get into that too as well. I was geeked about that when I saw it. But that was just a side note, because that was one thing that irked me up until and after this movie. People were still the corniness thing, which again, there's something to be said about black men being the only ones I see in media being called corny whenever they're into something nerdy, or I don't know. It's a whole thing, but that's something for another day.
To hell with them.
But yeah, this film was great to me. First and foremost, I thought the choreography was and the way it was shot was at its peak at this movie to me.
Yeah.
Favorite fight forever and ever. All men will always be that first fight that Damien had against, I almost called him Canelo, but that's not his name.
No,
this is an actual fighter, right? That was acting in that role.
Was that real? I mean, it may have been. What
I saw, he was an actual fighter.
Probably was.
The one that
was. He was he was badass. I can't remember his name right now. I'll look him up. Was
that
Hector? Maybe
something like that. But that was Felix. That's what it was.
Felix. Yeah, Felix.
Yeah, that was some anime shit. Like that fight, the way he was like slowly dismembered, like he saw a weakness that they pointed out in their first encounter, and he was slowly like breaking him down. I was like, damn, this is some anime shit, and he did it in a slick way.
I was like, felt like Hajime no Ippo, bro. Like watching. So I mean, going to the first fight of the movie when Creed is fighting like I can't remember his name, but you know what I'm talking about.
Conley.
Yeah, he's Conley. Ricky Conley comes back, and he said it's the same old Creed.
Like, you see like the moment where you see Creed dodging a punch, looking at where he's going. Like the way that they set that up, that felt so anime, like
pure anime. It's like Megalo boxing. Yeah.
Okay, let's get it. Like, okay, same combo comes, dodge it. That's the spot. I'm gonna get him next round. Don't even trip.
Funny
You know,
enough, in the videos I've seen of like Michael B talking about the inspirations, he mentioned all those anime inspirations for these fights.
Yeah, he
Like,
mentioned
how'd you
Ippo, he mentioned Megalobox, obviously
Mhm.
DBZ and Naruto. Yeah, so
It was
I mean,
cold.
like, for the people that are trying to like check his nerd cred, like, stop it. Because
what are you talking about?
the fact that he's in a position that he's in a big Hollywood film and incorporating any of this culture is huge, right? Like, we've seen it done sloppily how many times before?
Every time before?
And this was clean. Like, how many times have we seen people try to like sneak in an anime scene and it comes out stupid? Cough, cough. Nope.
Yeah, the Akira slide.
Like the double punch that Goku and Vegeta had.
Right.
Yeah.
into this film.
It's from the fight, the second fight in the Buu saga. Yeah.
Like, it was clean, bro. Like, it was
Yeah.
very well done.
But it was
Don't
palatable because
story, right.
you can't. I'm sorry, I'm gonna cut you off.
You
You can't go so hard into the anime realm that you go Dragon Ball Evolution or whatever. It has to be like people who do not care about anime at all had to say, I had to be able to watch and enjoy this. I mean, non-casuals had to be able to watch and enjoy this movie as a boxing movie or a drama, what have you. However, the fans of those mediums can still appreciate what you're doing, can see the nods. Okay, that makes sense within the realm of boxing and enjoy it. The idea of having almost like a not a illusion eye, but being able to kind of see what's happening and predict or kind of
fucking Sharingan, yeah.
Like Sharingan from Naruto, right? Having that kind of an eye to do those kind of things. For people that don't know what anime is at all, it can still enjoy what they're watching and say, "Oh, this is cool to have this effect in this movie." But for fans of anime, like, "Yo, that's dope," and he did that, snuck it in there. So it's for people to be upset about. That's crazy. I hate people. For people to be upset about that, it's like, what are you talking about? He's shining a light on these things so that we can do that much more later on.
But this has been a thing with him for a minute, though. People have called him corny and a fake anime nerd since he did that promo thing with
whatever. I don't care.
Which is wild. Which I feel like they turned on Meg fast because they used to love Meg about that. That was like everybody loved that she did that, and then all of a sudden she's fake because she does. I don't know.
What's wrong with people, man? Why do we want to hate on though? Why are we gatekeeping? Why are we gatekeeping our own people? First of all, that's another thing.
I mean, it's part of that thing we talked about a while back with Ohead and Mike when we discussed people being bullied about it growing up, and now it's openly in like welcoming. Yeah. It's the whole thing, but
yes, another episode, I guess. That's
choreography was dope. Moving into the characters and the development portion of it, I absolutely loved Damien Anderson. I thought it was like a perfect mirror into the Adonis creed of he's just as hungry as you were, had just as much natural ability, but he never got a chance that you got, and he's in there building up this rage because he's seeing you basically live his life essentially. Yes. And when he gets out, I was like, how old is he supposed to be? Because Buddy looks like he could be mid-20s or like late 30s. They kept making it a point to say he's old. I'm like, how old is he supposed to be?
40.
Yeah, he's supposed to be up there. He's supposed to be up there. Yeah, because obviously Jonathan Majors is maybe 30 something. He's in his 30s. But,
is he in his 30s?
He's in his 30s. I'm not sure. I'm trying to look it up right now. His exact ages, but yeah, they aged really well. Obviously, Black don't crack. Both because the whole idea was Adonis retired in 2017, and this movie is set 5 years after that. And in boxing terms, athlete terms, that's a long time to be like you have ring rust on you. And of course, they said that Damien was actually older than Adonis. So if that's the case. And Damien didn't have any professional fights under his belt, not really. So it's a long shot within a long shot.
Golden Gloves.
He was Golden Gloves back in the day.
Right.
He was a teenager.
Title shot is crazy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Which it's why I think that's there's also the anime influence where you get people that just like progress really fast for no explicable reason. Yeah. But I mean, it made simple enough sense on why he got the title fight, I guess, and how he promoted it, because we've seen people promote it like that in other sporting events as far as like the underdog come up story or whatever else.
Well, even in Rocky, and they mentioned that that's what happened with Rocky and Apollo in the first movie. Rocky was a nobody, and they deliberately had Apollo bring up a nobody for a publicity stunt, and he almost beat him. And the same thing happened with Felix versus Damien. So
same thing didn't happen because he put Felix in the
no,
hospital.
he destroyed him. Yeah, that was an unsettling fight watching those things happen.
Bro, I was. You should have been in the theater I was at when that was going on. It was dead silent. People were
silent?
like, "Oh shit!" Like you could feel the tension in the entire room.
Yeah. People were cringing and stuff right in the theater. I was at that Cito and I were at. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I also liked about it again, and I don't know if it's more anime theme or just something that he did well in that movie, where he showed the distinctive way that Adonis fought. Like he fought really unorthodox. The way he would.
Oh, you mean Damien?
Damien, yeah, I'm sorry. The way Damien would block, like with the 2 forearms up. Things where they're very unorthodox and they're not the way to go about them, but it also showed how Adonis was able to beat him with all those injuries and all that ring rust because the guy he was fighting wasn't a trained fighter, so he was able to pick him apart. But it was just dope to see that brawler style. I love that style. Even like how the way he came in, not like it was almost like he was a southpaw almost, but it was like a weird version of it. Like it was again, it felt very anime-ish. And
it reminded me also of Mike Tyson back in the day too, because if y'all remember Mike Tyson back in the day when he first came out, when he was still his rookie season or whatnot, he didn't have all the hoopla. It was just him in his trunks, didn't have a cape or anything. He's walked out there, he was bowled out there, basically, almost kicked in the ropes. It knocked him out in the first minute and then walked off. That was how he did things. And he reminded me a lot of that. Even with the trunks, the black trunks he had on, but he was adjusting them over and over again. And he kept breathing hard, where he would like put his hands up. And it was very much a wild, like you said, unorthodox prison training boxer.
My life goal is to have as much swag as he had on that beach when he confronted him. Like the swag that Buddy had, or even when he was like leaning on his car in like the beginning of the movie, he's like, "What up, bro?" I'm like, I aspire to have that much swag in my body, in my life, in my soul.
To have holes in your shoes, look homeless as hell, and stuff that much. I was like, damn. I've seen countless homeless cats out here in LA, and none of them had that much swag.
You convinced me to do whatever the hell you wanted at that point. You said what?
I said it's a way of life.
It's a way.
That swag is crazy. That swag is crazy. And I enjoyed their dynamic as well. As I thought the relationship between Adonis's I guess surrogate mother was very much so detailed in this one. And I said that gym scene was my favorite. I ain't gonna lie, this may be my favorite. This is my 1 and 2 as far as favorite scenes from the film, in which she's passing on and she's kind of hallucinating and believe that she's speaking to Apollo and talking about how you saved her. And I'm like, yeah, bro, I was crying about it. You got me right here, bro. That shit killed me.
Because she thought she was talking to Apollo, and she was thanking, and she was saying, "Apollo, your son saved me." Yeah, so she doesn't know that she's talking to that son. Yeah,
that shit was, bro. That shit.
But it made it full circle as far as when he back to the day when he was like 8 or 9, or whatever, and she found him in the boys' home or the juvenile. He was in juvie. But yeah, I agree. It was awesome. It was fantastic. Yeah, Damien. So here's one thing too, not to get too nerdy when it comes to writing. Y'all know how I am about writing. I can't stop sometimes. So Damien is meant to represent what they call a shadow. In writers' terms, sometimes a shadow isn't actually a physical manifestation at all. Usually it's not, but in this case it actually was. Damien was from his past, represent everything that he was trying to get away from, all of his dark sides, all the things that he had done, all his mistakes was represented by Damien, so to speak. And Damien actually looked essentially like a darker version of Adonis. He actually he went to prison for a long time. He boxed like a prisoner. He boxed like a former prisoner or a convict. He actually had he was a bigger version of that. He fought dirty. All these things. That's what a shadow self is essentially. So what Adonis was doing was confronting his shadow self, so to speak.
It was dope.
Yeah, I mean, getting to some of the gripes on it. Well, one, I felt like they had a couple setups in that movie that they didn't actually fully pay off.
Yeah, no one
like the whole incident where the daughter, punched the girl in at school.
Right.
I feel like they set up that to be more of a plot point within the movie, and it never really like actually materialized fully. Like it was addressed somewhat, but not really. That they set up actually a bit of tension between Tessa Thompson and Damien's character. I thought that could have been a plot point that they expanded on, especially if they were to extend this. Because before we even got into this movie, like my best case scenario was them to search this into 2 movies. So like Creed 3 would be them having this big beef, and then they're coming together to fight, and John Majors actually won it. And Creed 4 would have been, dealing with some like the aftermath of that, seeing some of the relationships change, and then them coming back and fighting over again, and then Creed wins that one. Now that would have been my perfect scenario for that, but I'm not too upset that they didn't go that way. But it did feel like a couple things were slightly rushed within this, especially like within like the dynamic of like the personal relationships between Damien and Creed. I feel like they could have done more to expand it, besides having like that one, like they really only had like 2 major confrontations. One being on ESPN with Stephen A's show, and then 2, the beach scene when Creed punches another random dude, and instead of
it's assault. You could go to prison for that, buddy.
He was like, yeah, like knowing your history, like that's jail time.
Yeah, that's Will Smith.
This is silk. You gonna like a pimp? Like this is Versace. Don't touch this.
Man down too. Like that wasn't like a jab, and like he just holding his face. Like dude was on the ground.
He didn't get back up either. If he walked away later on, he was still down on the ground. That guy was still down.
Bro, he was out. I'm like, nobody checked on him. Like your friends,
he had no friends.
You got some fake friends, bro. Then nobody flinched when you got knocked out. That's crazy.
That's wild, man. I'll go ahead and address some gripes too. One thing was, if Adonis was in fact retired for 5 years and he came back, that's a long road. I mean, you can't just like, we all saw George Foreman years later after he came back from retirement. That was a hard road to toe for him to get back into the ring. It seemed like Adonis came back lickety split, and I wasn't sure what his motivation was. Was it just to fight Damien, just to shut him up? Was like, why are you so mad at Damien? I mean, I get you're mad at him, but you have to beat him in the ring to shut him up or something. Like, what is the actual real motivation here for this? I get it when it came to in the second film with Drago, he was still the defending champ, and essentially it was a massive because he was disqualified during the fight. That's why he had to go back and fight him, essentially to prove he actually earned the belt or was worthy of the belt. But with this, to come out of retirement after 5 years just to fight your old friend, it's like, is that really enough of a reason to do something like that? I guess maybe. And then the other thing was, and this is another nitpick, was just the end of the movie after the fight's over. They kind of let it go on too long as far as the whole family time with them, like in the ring, and I'm a happy father with my daughter and stuff. Like, yeah, I get it. It's cool. You have a family. I know you're setting up the rest of the franchise, possibly having Amara be a fighter, but this is going a little long in the tooth here. We can edit some of this down. So
just to tackle a couple of those points you guys brought up, which they are very valid. The daughter fighting thing, I like kind of what Ethan said. That to me was blatant, them trying to set up another trilogy down the line of his daughter being a fighter now, rather than being boxing or another form or fashion of fighting. Which honestly, I'm excited. Is that like I'm excited to see how that's handled, because you have a deaf fighter now, so there's like a million different issues and dynamics and things you can write in there to make that make sense. That's one thing. I agree with you on the Adonis point too. The Adonis Tessa Thompson weird chemistry they had going on was something that I believe was kind of unresolved. I felt like I didn't really know what they were trying to go for. I get they were trying to give a way for Tessa to get a window into the things that Adonis was running away from, but I feel like their personal connection was kind of cut early. And again, kind of agree with Ethan as far as the point of them holding on to that. Well, I don't agree as far as them holding on to it too long. To me, that felt like the final scene of a trilogy. Like you're gonna drag out the ending as like an applause sense. Like to me, that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Now they have a Creed 4. Now I'm pissed because I'm like, what was the point of you dragging that out for so long? But
which is in production supposedly. Creed
really,
4 it's in pre-production.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know what the fuck they're doing about that one. Then does that?
Yeah.
We'll get into that. This is the issue with the sequel thing, because now you're milking it. The third one is ended here.
Well, obviously, cash coin is real. Coin is very real. But it seemed like you said that's a perfect curtain call. It seemed very much. I know you haven't seen the end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy yet, Charlie. But Otis, the scene at the end of Lord of the Rings when on the bed jumping around. That's basically what that was. But it made sense because at the end of the trilogy, it's okay, we're done. And even then, we're not too long in Lord of the Rings by far, but. Yeah, it felt like way too long.
Boy, that movie could have ended like 4 times.
Literally 4 times. At least
another episode.
That's another episode. But it felt kind of like, okay, we get it. Because also I saw people. The guy I was next to. It was the me and Cito and then two other friends were with us as a group of us. And the guy next to me like was checking us watch a couple of times during that scene when they're wrapping around the ring. So like, okay, I got you, buddy, I got you. So
yeah, that's what that felt like. And for the point of him coming out just to fight him, to me that was just a pure testosterone, ego, and pride thing of like he's talking shit on national television, and I gotta fight him at that point. That's what that felt like to me. Like to me, this movie wasn't, at least the trilogy itself. It's a fighting movie. I can't think of too many sports films with a plot that intricate. Like we know at the end of the day, you're watching a sport film for them to play this sport. You just need to give them a simple reason to play the sport, and everything else follows along with that. To me, and it made sense. Partly again, I think for what this trilogy is as a sports trilogy, it was fine to me. I thought that the writing wasn't too crazy. I thought that they allow for influences of other mediums and culture was excellent and on point there for what the characters were, the way it was written. I thought that we were able to connect to Adonis and all three of us in multiple different ways, in multiple different movies. I thought that was really well done for different people to connect to him at different points of his life for different reasons was really well done as well. And just the way it was shot, I think from the first one to the third one progressively got better, and the way it was shot and the action was really crisp to me, from either just the camera quality maybe to just the way that the choreography was done. I'd be very interested to look up who did the choreography for this and how, like, the training process for it, because it looked really dope for me.
Yeah,
and then we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about one of the things that Charlie's favorite parts of a lot of movies is the music. Because
you already know how I feel about the third one.
Yeah, it had the best music.
My boy Cole got busy in that training montage. I was like, "Hey, bro, I'm mad as hell because I don't know what song that is."
So petty having him have a verse after that. I was like, "Why you do him like that?" Bro?
The Sean verse was cold though. I thought the Sean verse was dope. I fucked with the Sean verse.
It was cool. Like it was a cool
Sean
verse,
fan, though,
but
so
like
I'm biased.
If you're thinking that's gonna compare the immaculates of that Cole verse that he had while John Majors is going up these two ropes, like what is he doing? They had to do John, but Sean had a nice verse too. I'm not gonna.
Hey, Dreamville is up. We had our hands all over this trilogy when it comes to music. Some of the best parts of it, some of the best music came out of it. The Shea Butter Baby track from the second movie. I gotta listen to the song in its totality, but the Boss track at the end that they used for the outro. I think I sent you guys a video of it where Michael was in the studio and everything.
Dreamville did the whole soundtrack for Creed 3.
Really? For the whole? Okay. I know they did the whole thing. Because I know Jid had a song on her too. I don't think the song was in the movie, but it was like on the soundtrack. That was really good. Him and Luke did.
Yeah, my boy. That's on the soundtrack. Yeah.
Hey.
And even the opening track
up
too,
right now.
If y'all remember when they, it's I guess it's the flashback when it shows them when they're teenagers and they're driving to the actual event for Damien to fight for the Golden Gloves or have you. I mean, that track was great too. Dope track. So I mean, all the music was great. Actually, all the music throughout the whole trilogy was great.
Dreamville.
So it's So I mean, that's a huge highlight for me is the musical score. Yeah.
I ain't gonna lie, I thought it was kind of random that they had all these Dreamville artists in, and then they had Kalani in the actual film. I'm like, damn. I mean, she was great, but yeah, all these Dreamville artists making music, and can none of y'all like pop in for this? Like Ari couldn't pop in for this.
Guess they didn't want to spring for it. I don't know.
It is what it is. Yeah. But thank you for bringing it up. I totally how I feel like I'm fake now because I talk about music so much and just forgot about music for the film.
But that's a good sign though. There's so much other good things or things to talk about that music, which is huge for you, you almost forgot about. That should tell you something. Yeah, you weren't strong.
So because we haven't rated or reviewed any of these films before now, let's go ahead and give a rating review for the first one up to the third one. Starting with Creed 1, what would you guys give it out of 10? Start with Otis.
Creed 1, I'm probably giving it a 9 out of 10. It gave me most of what I wanted from a movie.
I agree. I'll probably give it I'll probably give it a 9. I was gonna say 8.5, but I'll give it that bump to 9.
Nice, right on. I had to give it a 10. I mean, it literally changed my life, so I had to give it a 10. I mean, I get it. If I'm not trying to say it's perfect, but for me, it really hits. So
okay. Moving on to the second one. Otis, what are you giving the second one?
2. I'll probably give that one like a 7.5, 8. So I'll give it 8. 8 is fine. Give it 8 out of 10.
I give it I probably have to give that one a 9 too. I want to give it a 10, but there are some I gotta give it a second watch. That's my thing. I gotta watch it for a second time. All these movies I watched for the first time right next to each other. So I think a second watch would probably give it a more accurate score, but I give it a 9 as well.
Fair enough. Yeah, I rewatched it again when Casey was in town because Casey loves Creed movies. Upon another viewing, I've seen it like 3 or 4 times now. Some of the things I was more, that I was more prickly about earlier viewings. I wasn't as bad about this time, so I'll give it a solid 8. I give it a solid. I mean, I still love the character. I love the world. I really, really do love Victor Drago a lot. He is the Brawley version of Brawley that it's really cool to see. So, yeah.
And finally, the big Kahuna, the most recent one, the third one. Otis, what are you giving it?
I think I'm gonna give us a 9 too, because again, like it had so many things that I enjoyed heavily, but there are some issues like with well, we pointed them out, like some slight things that they. One thing that you will see, like going through all the POIs that we've done on this show, I'm a really big person for setups and payoffs. And I didn't feel like they paid off all of their setups fully, so I can't give it that full 10. But it still really thoroughly enjoyable movie.
All right, yeah, I agree. I believe though that for me personally, that the big spectacle moments and the big emotional moments, those to me were done so well, from the fight scenes to the emotional scenes with his surrogate mother. Those just hit so much for me that I'm willing to overlook a few of the issues with all those setups and lack of payoffs. And then that also will depend on if those setups are for future installments or if that was just something they just forgot about for this movie as well. So I think that dictates that. But for me, this third one and being the blurred and all the anime influences that are involved in it and how well they were done, I'd give this a 10 for me personally.
That's fair. I don't, no protest from me. I would give this one a solid 8.5. For me, it's really, really good. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it too. And I'm sure on a few future viewings may raise my score. The setups and payoffs that Otis mentioned. One of the things they set up in the very first fight was the whole idea of essentially, and Adonis says, checkmate. I have a checkmate for him, and it seemed to be kind of a running theme. And even when he's doing the same, the vision going.
I was waiting for a checkmate to be said in that last
never
fight.
Says it
bro.
again.
Like,
never comes up at all. Also,
they showed it.
They showed the vision, yeah, but he doesn't say checkmate again because he's with Wood Harris again. As far as his boxing coach, who knows him, that was his old thing to do, and he doesn't use it. And also as far as a setup with Damien, the whole thing was he had a massive right hook that was really cool. You think that's his signature move. It's his signature move in that one fight in the very beginning when he's a teenager, never comes up again. It's like, why they bother setting that up so heavily?
Right.
So, but again, these are small gripes. Think about the accomplishment of this movie, of this franchise, to have 3 good movies. Are you fucking kidding me? That's so rare. It's insane. It is bonkers. So if you think I'm complaining about anything, check yourself. I am not. This is fantastic. I grew this thing out and this thing out just for this dude. I literally at the dealership had someone say, "You look like Michael B. Jordan." I almost cried on their lap. I was so happy. So yeah, don't worry about that.
Oh man, he knows my reference towards him too, because I mean, one of our characters in Briarlands is modeled off of Michael B. So I mean,
I have to agree. It's probably a potential POI that I like to do as far as going into the succession of legendary IPs, which I think me and Otis talked about it briefly. Up until this point, the only ones we could think of off the top of our heads were the Creed trilogy and the new It trilogy that happened, as far as bringing back an IP that was really well received in the past and trying to redo it or make a succession of it. Those don't really go well. Very well at all, unless they're animated sometimes.
It's very hard to do.
And they did it, and all 3 movies were well done and well received. I'm like, hey man, kudos to you. But again, this is a testament to Coogler and MBJ, which has me even more excited about how Coogler's going to do the Kang Dynasty, because hey, you got Jonathan Majors and Coogler again. I'm like, hey, bro, it's gonna be. Yeah. I know a lot of people are kind of looking at the MCU kind of way. I'm just waiting to see when Coogler and Jonathan Majors get together again and see how they do, because those are the big spectacle movies, and I think those are going to be probably the best movies out of the MCU in the history so far. Personally, I think they will be, because I don't think I've seen, like, Thanos is great, but I don't know if any villain up until this point of Marvel has had an actor of the caliber of a Jonathan Majors yet, as far as villains go. Personally.
No, so I agree with. I 100% agree with that. Jonathan Majors. We all saw Loki. That Loki was a decent enough show, I guess. And then you said a final episode, which pretty much just a showcase for Jonathan Majors to be standing on a desk. It's like everyone was like, "This is the greatest show of all time," just because of his performance. Kang in that Quantumania, we can
He made that movie watch.
yeah, you can get a Quantumania, but the idea is just watching Jonathan Majors anytime he's on screen. It's like, yo, that's a celebrity, that's a superstar. So like you could be right having Ryan Coogler's writing, because he did write, he did the story for Creed 3. Having his writing and directing and influence, and having Jonathan Majors as his star, would be amazing.
Hey, bro, all that we need to do is bring Michael B. Jordan back from the dead and see what happens.
I mean, they did before. Spoiler alert.
Hey, I predicted that. Niggas thought I was crazy. Granted, it wasn't in the way that I thought it would be, but I said he'd be back to some extent.
You did say he'd be back.
Just Coogler, don't drop the ball with the ending like you did with Black Panther 2, because what the fuck was that?
Okay,
that's another show. That's another. Yeah, that's another.
We still got to review that at some point. I forgot
we didn't review that. We got a bunch of stuff to do.
Yeah, but yeah, guys, you guys have any closing remarks on the Creed trilogy?
Yeah, again, that fight, the end fight, Kakashi Obito level anime fight. I mean, that's you could tell Michael B. Jordan said, "I wanted to have fun. Let me just do this one thing," and I'm so glad he did. He may never get a chance again, so why not do your thing, brother? Thank you.
Yeah, I hope this movie makes $1 billion just to show that.
How much has it made? Let me check.
So I think it's already broken some domestic records already. I think.
Yeah, it broke the record for highest grossing sport movie in a single weekend.
Now it's out for 2 weeks. So let's see here.
Trying
to find it.
Of course, now I just wanted to make more money than Black Panther 2 did.
Oh my god! I don't think there's enough hype. Well, there's hype around it, but the mass amount of nerd Marvel fans versus boxing fans, I don't know.
I think this is personally, I think this is a significantly better movie than that.
But there are a lot of issues that Black Panther 2 had to deal with that this movie didn't have to deal with. When it came to handling death and handling all kinds of convoluted storyline and plot points. This movie was able to be a movie versus that second one. There was for me personally, I won't get into it a lot because we're gonna do a review on it at some point probably. There is so much for Coogler and the writing team to deal with that second movie, both within the franchise and in real life. For what it turned out being, I enjoyed it. I thought it was probably one of the better MCU movies personally. But but that's
I did too.
Yeah, we'll get into it. We'll get into that review. Yeah, we'll for sure get into that review. But I think that Coogler made 2/3 of a really good movie, and then
I still, I mean, it was the ending. I know it's kind of weird and wonky, but I still enjoyed the movie. I actually liked it more than Black Panther 1. Mainly,
it's definitely better than the first. But that's also a bad movie.
But we'll get into all this again.
God, you're gonna get
but we're gonna get so much smoke. We're gonna get canceled tomorrow. But I am still excited to see what Coogler and Majors do. I'm glad to see that there actually are, as blurs, we know that we want to see stories, compelling stories with people of color that are doing things besides just being gangsters in the hood or being drug dealers. Actually doing all kinds of fun and interesting, different types of stories. I'm glad to see that that's happening more and more now, slowly but surely.
I want my opportunity though, because as of now, I've only seen there's like 2 to 3 black men and maybe just one black woman I can think of that are getting the opportunities to tell these stories within big opportunities, like with Jordan Peele, Coogler. I think Nia DaCosta just got her really big break with Candyman, working on that and leading that. Issa Rae, like you said before, Tyler Perry. It seems like a lot of names we named here, but in comparison to the rest of the field, there's a really big visible gap there.
Yeah, there's a massive gap. Like I said, it's slowly but surely. But I think it's becoming more understandable that people of color enjoy entertainment, that it's not just a day in life in the hood.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, did you find the numbers for that you were looking at?
I'm on Box Office Mojo now. I'm sorry, my internet's having issues on my computer. So I'm trying to look at here for Creed 3, what the total box office is. So total, let's see. Oh my gosh, what's the total box office for this movie? So the total box office.
The one show we don't have to though is crazy.
Yeah, no. What the worldwide box office now so far for Creed 3 is $179 million.
That's not bad.
It deserves more.
It's only for 1 week, going from last I guess Thursday, Friday to this
Was
weekend.
that opening week or is it just this past week in total?
It's total worldwide.
Yeah, it came out on the 3rd and it's the 12th, so like a week and a half.
Damn, man, that feels like forever ago now. Damn, okay, yeah, I'm ready to see this movie grow in success.
Yeah,
go watch Creed 3. Go watch Creed 3, y'all.
Yeah, it's fine. It'll get. I mean, it's fine. It's doing really well. So yeah, we're good. We're good. And I didn't mention this part that it got 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. All three of the Creed movies, 95%, 83%, 88%. That's staggering for a trilogy to be that high. The last time that happened with a trilogy was with the Toy Story, where they're all like 100% or 99%. Usually there's always a dip somewhere in there.
Especially on something as inconsistent as Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
It definitely didn't happen with The Matrix.
Why?
Have you seen that?
I was waiting for the Warner Brothers job, and I knew he was going to sneak it in there. So let's go ahead and close this out before we cancel.
Oh yeah, you had to close it. Anytime there's a Warner Brothers job, you had to close on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Guys, this is a great franchise. I enjoyed it. My co-host thoroughly enjoyed it. We're going to be reviewing more stuff. If you guys have any other requests for movies that may not be on the new up and up that you want us to look at and review, let us know in the comments below. Again, this has been another episode of the Then and Out podcast. I'm your co-host C Diesel, Lelouch V, Professor E, King of the Comics, Ethan Murphy, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Let's see if John Wick 4 can get anywhere near like above a 7.
Jesus Christ.